All right, so I'm just going to start with a quick welcome for everyone and ask you to be a little bit patient with us. We're going to allow another couple of minutes for everyone registered to be able to join. So we'll be kicking it off in just a couple of minutes. We're very thankful for your patience. Ibrahim, you had your hand raised. Please feel free to type any questions you have in the chat and we will be addressing them all. All right. Very well then. So without further ado, we'll be kicking off this session. Thank you everyone who joined us from everywhere. Hello, Yasser. Thank you. Basically, the agenda for today is going to be quite diversified. We hope you're going to be enjoying this. What we hope you're going to be taking away from today's session is the value of the CMA certification, the available resources and support that you will get to ensure that you have the best chances to pass the CMA certification, as well as a demonstration of how a lecture of the CMA preparation course will be running. With me, I'm very honored to be introducing one after the other very shortly, Mr. Ahmed Makhallati from the IMA, Mr. Michael Brown from Becker, and Mr. Ra'ad Hanoun, who's an instructor with us, our lead instructor at Morgan International. They'll each get a chance to introduce themselves a little bit more to you in due time. But without further ado, let's take forward the topic for today, which is the Certified Management Accountant certification. So the Certified Management Accountant certification offered by Morgan International, a quick brief, if you'll allow me, on Morgan International. We've been in the preparation courses for international certification for 30 plus years now. We are operating in over 28 locations across the globe, and we've very proudly graduated over 150,000 certification holders on the different certifications that we offer, as well as serviced some of the top organizations, especially in the GCC and MENA region, as well as in Europe and East Asia. But basically, our portfolio spans across a lot of fields. So we do offer professional certification preparation courses, as well as industry-specific workshops, soft skills trainings, and continuing education, as well as in-house trainings. A lot of certifications within the finance realm, especially the CMA subject of today, as well as other certifications in the human resource marketing and supply chain field. I'm sure you'll recognize some of the corporates that we've currently serviced or partnered with across the years. And now, without further ado, your topic of interest, how to become a CMA. Firstly, the reasons why you want to become a CMA. The CMA is a certification offered by the Institute of Management Accountant, which my colleague, Mr. Makhallati, in just a few minutes will be briefing you more on its value and the value of becoming part of such a community and organization. The CMA certification itself covers 12 core practice areas in management accounting. And I just want to point your attention to a very important fact that we cannot stress on enough at any given time. When we say management accounting, this is not a certification that is restrictive to accountants. This is a certification for anyone aspiring to hold a managerial or supervisory position, but they will need to learn all the management accounting principles and a part of the finance lingo, if you want, in order to be able to better drive business decisions out of financial reports. The recognition and value is pretty global. The CMA is recognized in over 100 countries, a network of over 70,000 certification holders and experts. I mean, pretty sure statistically CMAs earn 28% more than the total median compensation for others. That's in the US, and globally, the extra earning for a CMA holder is 50% than their peers. It's a certification that can be completed anywhere between 9 and 12 months. We've had candidates who've completed it in shorter time span, others that may have taken longer. It depends on how much time you can actually dedicate to the completing the certification and studying its content. It's definitely a certification that covers a lot of managerial aspects, from strategic thinking to cost management to decision analysis, as well as internal controls, and most importantly, especially in our times, managing risk, mitigating risk, part of the very important factors in any business and managerial decision. So what do CMAs do on the job? Well, you prepare and analyze financial data. You read financial statements to be able to draw particular business decisions. One example that I personally always like to give is if you're a manufacturing company and you have a manufacturing line of 3 products, each one has a specific cost and selling count and selling time frame and selling value, and each presents a certain contribution margin. If at any given point you have to stop one of these manufacturing lines, maybe increase another, which one would you stop? A non-experienced manager would simply look at the profit margin, maybe the contribution margin, and say, like, I'm going to stop the one that's making the least contribution. But if you're a CMA, if you learn management accounting, you can look at more details, like the cost per hour, like the cost per labor, and any other details that may be influencing that decision. And sometimes just dropping the one that is currently making the lowest contribution might not be the correct decision, because dedicating more time instead of another product might make this product highly much more contributing, which is very important. So as CMAs, you definitely have a lot of value to present to your management. So if you aspire to be promoted, if you're currently a manager and you want to be much more functional and performance, we strongly recommend considering the CMA. So it will bring career satisfaction, it will bring advanced level credential because of its recognition, of course, career development, and definitely, as we mentioned earlier, a higher median revenue. Okay. Uh, who might be interested in hiring CMAs or upskilling their employees to becoming CMAs? Any type of organization, whether it's governmental, public sector, non-governmental, academic, private firm, consulting, multinational corporations, anybody could benefit from a valued CMA manager on their staff. So if you want to get there, a CMA will also help you get there. So in order to become a CMA, you have to pass the CMA exams. It's a certification that's in 2 parts, which we will be elaborating in just a few. And then once you study for your exam and pass it, you will have to present a certain number of years of experience, like 2 years of experience in a managerial or management accounting role. A lot of experience may account to management accounting. The IMA will definitely advise on that part, and you don't have to have that experience prior to taking the course or passing your exams. You have up to 7 years after you register to actually provide proof of such an experience. So you will learn definitely a lot of valuable content that will help you maybe change your role or just improve in your current role as a chief financial officer, financial controller, cost accountant, financial manager, accounting manager, and I'll add to that area manager, country manager, sales manager, procurement manager, even whatever managerial role you aspire to. The learnings of the CMA would definitely help you nail that role and be more performant within it as well. So once you earn your CMA, you definitely need to maintain it. And that's one of the higher values of a certification is that you don't just learn something and earn a certification. The value of becoming certified and having those three letters right next to your name and becoming part of such a well-recognized community is that they require you to to maintain your knowledge, to make sure you're up to date, that you're constantly following the current trends in controls, in information systems, in standards, etc. So you have to accumulate 30 hours of CPE credits in order to renew your CMA license. Otherwise, you're going to have to take it again to maintain the status. So the CMA, as I said, is in two parts. Part one, mainly financial planning, performance, and analytics. It focuses on a lot of aspects like internal controls, cost management, technology, and analytics. It's the heavier part of the two. It usually we recommend up to 170 hours of preparation and study time in order to successfully pass your exam. And the part two exam is strategic financial management, where it's more about strategic decisions, financial management, and corporate finance, with definitely a high focus on ethics. And the recommendation is to prepare for about 130 hours before you actually take on the exam. There are certain fees required for exam takers. You need to register with the IMA, become a member of the IMA, and then there's an exam fee for each part. But the revenue, the return on investment, once you actually finish that, will be tremendous. The exams are taken at approved testing centers, which is Prometric, depending on your country. Prometric might be in a different place. For example, in Lebanon, in certain other countries, it's Amethyst. In another country, it might be a different organization. You could always visit Prometric website and double check available testing centers in your country. The CMA can be taken in separate exam windows across the year. So you can either take the exam between January and February, or between May and June, or between September and October. This is important for you to plan your study time. And we also plan our course times at Morgan International. So we schedule courses that allow you enough time to target one of these specific exam windows. The exam itself is 4 hours for either part, 100 multiple choice questions and 2 30-minute essay questions. You have to score above 50% on the multiple choice part so that the second part of the exam will open for you. And that first part is in itself 75% of your score. And Michael will be helping us later with the study access, how to practice your MCQs and secure a high performance rate on the MCQs to secure a higher potential grade and improve your chances in passing your exam from the first attempt. You need to score above 360 over 500 on the exam to ensure that you pass. And we strongly recommend that you put up a study plan based on the exam window, the course time frame, and the available time that you have to allocate. One of the features on your study access with Becker, Michael will be demonstrating this, mentioning, is a study planner, so that the system can also help you segment all the content that you have to study based on the time frame and the target exam date that you are aiming for, and definitely allocate sufficient time to prepare so that you secure a higher probability of passing your exam from the first attempt. Once you take a course, and you will witness a partial demonstration with Mr. Ra'ad later, our tutors will help you better understand the content, navigate the Becker platform content as well, in order for you to be able to be better prepared for the exam, just as well as learning that content and being more capable of using it in your daily function as well. So we are partnered with the IMA as a Platinum CMA course provider, as well as Becker, who is our go-to education content provider, as partners. So later on, Mr. Michael will give us a better brief about Becker, but definitely the features available in the Becker website are designed to help you stream through your content seamlessly. Multiple packages may be available based on your preferred study resources to be available for you. And I'm not going to talk much about the personalized learning experience and the new AI-powered academic support. Mr. Michael is going to be covering those in just a bit, as well as the simulated exams. So just a few study tips. Discipline is all that matters. Attend your courses, go through your study platform, Ask your tutors whatever you need to ask, anything that is unclear. They are the most qualified people to help you with that. Allocate enough time, and you should have no issues passing your exam. After that, we can discuss continuing professional education to ensure that you can maintain your CMA status. Thank you so much for giving me this time. I'll take it now to Mr. Ahmed Mekhallati from the IMA, who will be giving you a quick brief on the value of the IMA itself and the CMA certification in particular. Mr. Ahmed, platform is all yours.
Thank you very much, Charles, and what a wonderful introduction about the CMA certification. That's amazing. My name is Ahmed Makhallati, Senior Director, IMA Middle East, India, and Africa Operations. It's such a pleasure being with you all on this webinar. I'm very excited about this webinar to talk about the IMA and the CMA certification in particular. Very excited about having also Michael joining us and Raed on this webinar. Just briefly, I'm going to start with introducing the IMA. The IMA stands for the Institute of Management Accountants. We're also known as the Association of Accountants and financial professionals in business. Our focus is to empower and connect professionals through knowledge and credibility, and to enhance the qualifications of managerial accountants throughout the globe. We're over 100 years old association. It was established back in 1919, and a total number of members throughout the globe, over 140,000, with over 100,000 active CMAs. I'm based in Dubai currently. I joined you on this webinar from Saudi Arabia on a business visit. Dubai office basically manages partners relationships throughout the Middle East, which is we are proudly in partnership with Morgan International, being recognized as the platinum approved review course provider for the IMA CMA course. Now, when we're talking about the association itself, I mean, in principle, the association didn't start because of the CMA certification. Once again, the association was built on anything that is required to enhance the qualifications of managerial accountants. So, beside the CMA, we have other certifications such as the FMAA, the Financial and Managerial accountant associate, and also we have the certified in strategy and competitive analysis, in addition to what we offer our members in terms of upskilling and reskilling in terms of webinars or courses that are available through our website. And of course, I mean, we're known with our community. The community is very important to us. Therefore, we have over 350 chapters worldwide where we get local chapters to engage with the local community with workshops and webinars. We're also known with our strategic finance magazine. This is our leading magazines that we share with our members. I'm not going to go through all of that details, but I'm going to go into something that is very important, how we derive the content of the CMA certification itself. We do very often something that is called like a survey where a job survey where we look into a survey where we ask top-notch CFOs and companies throughout the world what are the competencies or the skills required today to drive the business performance in today's business complicated environment. So we do that, and once we do that, I mean, we base our content of our certification, in particular the CMA, on those skills, on those competencies. What we have over here on the screen is the updated competency framework. So we see that it is very important for any professionals in managerial accounting to have those competencies to be labeled as a leader within the company itself. As a matter of fact, we're not talking about only a leader, we're talking about a strategic business partner within the organization itself. So it's very important to be aware of strategy, planning, performance, professional ethics and value, reporting and control, leadership, sustainable business practices and governance, digital transformation and innovation, cybersecurity and data privacy, data analytics and insight, emerging technologies in accounting and business acumen and operations. And why we do that, I mean, it's very simple because we all know that the profession itself is very dynamic and it's changing at a really fast pace. If you want to go back in time, like 10 years ago or maybe 15 years ago, it started with just an accountant. Then it developed into auditor. Then from there into managerial accounting. And nowadays, what the companies are looking for, not just an accountant, they're looking for those that will be able to look beyond the numbers and support the overall decision making when it comes to driving the business performance within organization itself. So what we're finding in nowadays in the market, what is required is critical thinking as well, sufficiency, technology skills, leadership and governance skills, teaming and collaboration. This is on the soft skills. If we're talking about the hard skills, we're talking about data analytic and visualization, data science, machine learning, and AI, robotic process automation, budgeting, forecasting, and reporting tools, and cloud-based accounting solution. Now, it's not moving my slide. Stuck. My slides are stuck. Anyway, I can continue live while we're stuck on this screen right over here. So when we're talking about management accountant, once again, we're not talking about accounting. And let me clarify that. Management accounting versus public accounting. They're two different areas in accounting. If we're talking about accountants or per se auditors, we're talking about those that they audit and more involved in tax and compliance. However, on the other side, when we're talking about managerial accounting, we're talking about those, again, strategic business partners that drive the business performance within the organization itself. So we're talking about those management accountants that supports creation of value, which is very important to any organization. The CMAs, they develop, they implement, they report and manage processes within organization. Plus, they are involved in internal and external reporting. On a high level, if I want to identify what's a CMA versus an internal auditor or an external auditor or internal auditor, they focus on tax compliance and audit, while managerial accountants, they focus on making money, very simply, bluntly speaking it. So if we're saying the CMA is not per se a person that will look into the past of financial statesmen only, or the present, what's happening within the organization itself, but also where the company is going to be 5 years from today, 10 years from today. This is what they're looking for. We say CMAs, they have the four sides, and I'm gonna mention those four sides. They have the oversight, the overlooking what's happening in the company itself, okay, including the financial statements. They're not limited or cocooned within one department, which is the accounting and finance, rather than they interact with the operation department, with the marketing department, with the business development department, and of course with the accounting and finance department that they are part of. So they also have another side, which is the hindsight. They look into the past of a financial situation where they learn from it and they apply it. And but not only when it comes to hindsight and oversight, but we're talking about the foresight, the same thing that I mentioned earlier, where the company is going to be 5 years from today. 10 years from today. Furthermore, also the insight, looking beyond the numbers and analyzing the numbers, and have a seat on the board of director table where they can help the upper management making the right decision. Now, when it comes to the CMA, the title itself, it's a globally recognized certification. It's not territory specific certification where it's only recognized, let's say, in Saudi Arabia or UAE or the USA. And that's why we don't have any any country specific attached to the CMA. It's a global passport. It's a multinational passport where you can work in any company throughout the world with the CMA certification that is really focused on the topics that already shared by Charles earlier through this webinar over here. So we say that it's a global passport that can take you to places, to another country. More than that, when it comes to career growth, the CMA is two parts exam, and they're not easy exam. It's a rigorous exam, and it takes a lot of preparation to pass the CMA exam. However, it doesn't mean that the CMA is a rocket science and it's very hard to achieve the CMA certification. Like mentioned by my colleague Charles, if you have the perseverance, you have the study plan, you're using really good materials. Michael is on the webinar with us. He's going to be talking about the Becker material. And if you have an approved course provider to help you get from that point of preparation to sitting for the two rigorous exam, such as Morgan International, is doable. It's not impossible. So with the CMA also, look at any of the recruitment portals, look into LinkedIn and so forth for those that they are out there, headhunting for professionals in managerial accounting. You will see the three letters. Nowadays, I mean, few years of experience plus academic degree is a great thing. But however, more and more you will see companies are looking for the three letters CMA when it comes to managerial accounting. So we'll give you the credibility also. And on a personal level, once you become a CMA, it gives you the confidence that you have the skills that our companies are looking for. And therefore, it open up opportunities for you to grow in terms of career. And not only that, what earlier mentioned by Charles, CMAs are known to make more money. And when it comes to job opportunities. It's known because the CMA is not something that is easily achieved. And I will conclude that. I'll make my presentation really quick. I will conclude that for some testimonials by saying, hearing from some of the CMAs where the CMA has taken on, like for Muhammad Sayed, unlock his CMA and CSCA advantage, boosting strategic thinking and stepping into leadership. Also, we have from Muhammad Shahab, he's saying from finance to strategy. Muhammad Shahab Habib leveled up with the CMA. One more of testimonial from Isabel Steller's finance skills and earning the CMA accelerated her journey to the leadership table. Um, when it comes to also mentioned earlier by our colleague Charles about the fees to for the CMA certification, which is the membership 295, the entrance fee that will give you the entry into the program for 3 years is 300, and each part exam is 545. Through our approved platinum course providers, we extend discounts. Final note before I hand over the microphone to, I believe, the next in line is Michael. And when it comes to the cost of the CMA, don't think about it as a cost. It's an investment in your career. And you will get a really good return on that kind of investment with those three letters, CMA, the Certified Management Accountant. And with that, I thank you everyone for joining us on this call over here, and I will stick around towards the end in case of your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ahmad. That was excessively rich in such a short time. It was amazing, really. Thank you. Always a pleasure to have you on our activities, and always a pleasure to hear the value of the IMA again and the CMA certification in particular. Ahmed,
Thank
we will definitely be addressing you again closer to the end because I want to thank everyone who actually took the time to answer the questions on the poll. Just a quick heads up for everyone. I would say that about 80 something percent of the attendees are in business management, accounting, and finance. But I'm also very curious about how we can tackle the CMA value for the other 15% that are not in management and finance. We're going to get to that at the end. And most importantly, the driving factor, which we're going to be discussing at the end, are the type of reports that everyone has to deal with on daily basis, whether it's budgets, forecasts, sales reports, expenses, inventory, payrolls, taxation. Everyone is really involved in all that, and it's definitely very important to try and highlight how the CMA can help in making better decisions from all such reports. We're going to get to that to the end, but at the moment, thank you again, Ahmed. Without further ado, we're going to move forward towards Michael Brown, who's going to be demonstrating the Becker access. Michael, I give you the floor.
Well, thank you very much. And I believe good evening from where you are. Good morning from where I am in the US. My name is Mike Brown. I'm one of Becker's national instructors, which basically means I get the lucky privilege of talking about accounting as a career path, talking about the various credentials that Becker helps students and candidates prepare for. It also gives us the opportunity to work with really amazing partners. I have been with Becker, it'll be 19 years in January. But the very first partner I was introduced to, in fact, they started me at the top. First person I ever met from Morgan was Fadi Ghani, who is the chairman and CEO of the company. But that was my first exposure. And of course, Morgan has been a driving force in the profession alongside Becker for every year that I've certainly been here, and I know longer than that. Uh, I don't have a lot of time, so I wish I could show you everything that is in the Becker platform. I'm sharing my screen right now, which is the home page of the CMA course. I'm going to highlight a couple of key items. Charles also mentioned a couple of those, one being the study planner. A lot of candidates sometimes struggle with figuring out how do I map out day by day, week by week. How do I kind of attack this exam, all of the various moving parts, all of the different content areas? What's a recipe for success? So I'll talk about that. I'll also talk about practicing the questions, and it'll give me a chance to introduce you to Newt, our new AI assistant that is, frankly, it kind of blows me away when I see what it can do compared to what we had only a couple of years ago. It's really something. So show you a couple of those, but I will put in one other plug because I can't show you everything today, but I do want you to have the chance to see it. I think as much as anything, I'll echo what Ahmed said. This is an investment, and so like any significant investment of time, money, energy, you want to make sure you're going in fully informed. So what I encourage you to do is to follow up with Morgan. You have the opportunity to connect with them, and you can take a demo of the course. So basically, have the chance to kind of get in here for yourself for a max 14 days and play with the different features, see what it's all about. It's one thing for me to show it to you on a webinar. It's a whole different thing if you can try it for yourself. But let me show you first off the study planner wizard. So one of the challenges that a lot of candidates face is, okay, I get it, as was mentioned, whether it's 150 hours, 170 hours, that's a big number. And trying to parse that down to, okay, but what do I need to do today? What do I need to do tomorrow? How will I know if I'm on pace, if I'm behind the pace? What do I need to do to catch up? All those kinds of questions. That's what the Study Planner Wizard is designed to do. So I'm going to walk you through, just as if I was a brand new candidate studying for the CMA exam, how I would fill this out. So let's say I'm going and I say, well, you know what? Let's start next week. We're gonna make this a little more comfortable. We'll say I'm going to start on Monday. That's my big launch date is October 6th. And then it says, well, do you know when you want to take your exam? The exam windows were mentioned, so you might think, oh gosh, maybe I want to try to finish by the end of October. But you can also tell the tool, well, I don't know my exam date. I'm not thinking I can do it in October. Maybe I'm going to target January. But you can set a time horizon or specify a date. Now, even with that little bit of information, what you'll see over here on the right-hand side is it goes ahead and does a basic calculation. It says, okay, well, to do that, you're now on the ballpark of 11 hours a week, and it's going to be a 14-week time horizon with a targeted exam date of January 2026. As you make adjustments and changes, that will continuously update. So you can always kind of check yourself to say, is that realistic? Can I spend 11 hours a week? Do I think the pace is right? Is that a good time for me to take the exam? And so on. We also have what we would refer to as supplemental materials that are built into the course. Two of those tools are flashcards. There's digital flashcards and what we call unlimited practice tests, or if you prefer, it's a quiz builder. It allows you to build kind of based on your parameters a quiz or quizzes, as many as you like. Some students really love flashcards. Some really don't. Same way with the practice test. So you can opt in or opt out. And you can see just by the practice test how that's adjusting the hours per week. Probably the most important questions are these two. Everybody studies a little bit differently. We kind of bucket them into three categories. We say, well, first off, there's the thorough studier. The thorough studier says, I'm going through every lecture and taking extensive notes. In class, I'm asking plenty of questions. I'm being very thorough, and I'm using every single tool that's built into the course. On the other end of that spectrum, we call them the quick studiers. These are the folks that say, I need to streamline. I only have so many hours, so I'm going to do what is recommended, and that's it. And I'm going to do everything I can to speed up the process. But most candidates end up in the middle. They're what we call kind of average. They take notes, but maybe not an extensive set. They use some, maybe most of the tools, but not necessarily all. What again, as I change that, you'll notice that hours per week will adjust. But I think just as important is how you're going to distribute your study time. Ultimately, we talk a lot in today's business world about the need for work and life balance. Well, when you're preparing for an exam, I like to say, well, now you have work life exam balance, and you've got to find the right way to balance all three of those. And every person's going to be a little bit different. This is your chance to say, am I more of a 2 hours every weeknight because I don't really want to study on the weekends? Maybe Wednesday is going to be my heaviest day. Every time I slide these around, it's checking it against the hours per week. This is how we make it more granular to say, this is what I can do. Or if you say, no, actually, I'm only going to study a couple weeknights. Really, I'll do most of my studying on the weekend. Fine. It's up to you to go ahead and adjust and tweak that as you see fit. Finally, you can populate any time off you have scheduled, but I also encourage candidates, if they know there's going to be a particularly easy for me to say, a particularly busy week at work, maybe it's a quarter close, something like that, where you say, look, we're swamped. I know we're going to be working long hours that week. Put that into the schedule. Build that into your study plan as well. Now, once you're satisfied, you just hit create study plan. And if I hop to next week, you'll see it has begun mapping out within the structure of the course the different elements. Now, I can look at this as a calendar, or I can look at it as a list view. I can even look at it as a Gantt chart, which shows me exactly how the course intends me week by week to move through the different materials. Other good news here, it's not set in stone. So you can always come back and edit it. A lot of times candidates think, I can do that many hours a week, and they jump into the course and pretty quickly realize, okay, this is taking a little longer than I expected it to. That's okay. The most important thing you do is to take stock and say, all right, what do I need to do to modify my study plan so I can stay on that road to success? This is also where a partner like Morgan is invaluable because they have resources to help you in this regard. If you have questions, I'm not sure I'm using the course as well as I should be. I'm concerned my study plan is not working out and I'm not quite sure what to do about it. That's where resources like Morgan can really help and kind of guide you through some questions and figure out what's the best next step. Now, I'm going to switch to part two for a particular reason. The structure of the course is built this way. So there's two parts to the exam. Within each part, there are 6 units. You may remember Charles showed you a diagram that shows that each part of the exam has 6 areas of content. Those are the 6 units. It's a great way to show, yes, our course is aligned with the IMA's learning outcome statements. Within each unit, we then break it up into kind of easy to, I would say, easily making sense together different modules. And one of these modules is what Red is going to cover in a little bit as a demo lecture. So I thought I'd pick the same area that he's going to be looking at. What he's going to be doing, for example, if we were talking about financial ratios, is he will be doing what we also have as our concept videos. So students who attend a class, that's how they get that concept video information. It's basically making sure your foundational knowledge is strong. But where you're going to spend more time is then applying those skills in practice, and particularly multiple choice. It was mentioned, 3/4 of your grade on the exam comes from multiple choice. So being able to effectively work through these is really important. And you'll notice I'm kind of bypassing it here, but whenever you enter a feature of the course for the very first time, it will take you through a brief walkthrough just to kind of orient you with what's going on. Now, one of the most important things is as you work through a question, let's say I said, I don't know, I feel like it's B. I'm going to get immediate feedback. So the benefit here is I can read and understand, oh, it was D. Now I can see exactly why. It will also explain why the wrong answer was wrong. A lot of times, if you pick a wrong answer, you made one mistake in the calculation. You made one misstep. You misread one part of the question. You don't want to think to yourself, oh, I completely blew it. You didn't. It's important then to be able to diagnose where did you go wrong. Now, a lot of folks would say, okay, some of these I'll get right and that'll make sense, and some I'll get wrong along the way, and I can read the explanation and get the idea. But what if I read the explanation and I'm still not sure what to do and I'm still unsure of next steps? Well, that brings Newt to the table. So, Newt is our AI. Anytime you see this kind of multicolored symbol, that's the Newt symbol. And it's going to offer some basic questions. So you can say, if you don't want to think of one of your own, choose one of the suggested questions. So it says, you know what, I really didn't understand the correct answer. Can you give me some more information about that? And it, based on all of the knowledge that has been fed into the artificial intelligence, including the core content and the various questions, the explanations, and so on, it will do its level best to give you that more detailed walkthrough. Now, bear in mind, if you struggle or if you look at it and go, I'm still a little lost, you can keep asking questions, but you can also contact our academic support. We still have humans that will answer your academic questions if you find this doesn't help. But the feedback we've received from our students thus far has been extremely positive, well north of 90% who say, yeah, when I ask Newt a question, I get the answer I need and I'm able to move on. So that is a powerful tool that can make your studying more efficient. And ultimately, that's a big part of what we do. We want to make sure the course is effective. That's bare minimum, right? It needs to make sure it can get you ready to take the CMA exam, but then we want to try to do it as efficiently as possible. And so offering tools just like Newt are one of the ways in which we do that. But want to make sure that I add in the other piece of this. Like I said, you're going to have multiple choice questions to practice. You also will have essays to practice with, which represent the other 25% of your score. But you can't deal with those content questions effectively unless your foundation is solid. And that's where your instructor comes into play. So I'm going to hand it back to Charles to introduce today's instructor, Red, to take you through and kind of show you how we go about and how Morgan goes about making sure your foundation is solid on which to build the question practice that's so essential for the exam. So, Charles, back to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Michael. Amazing, amazing content in very, very, very short time. Thank you so much for that. We're going to go over to Raed, but before we go over to Raed, I just want to say, Michael, it's so amazing that every time we're on such an activity and we're going through the software, I myself, after all these years, continue to learn something new every time. For example, I only just noticed it for the first time that at the top right on your simulated exam there's the MCQ number or MCQ ID, and then when you're within Newt they also reference that same MCQ ID, which the candidates can always use to find that particular question and remember that particular answer, why it was right, why it was wrong, and all that jazz. It's such amazing content. So again, thank you so much, Michael, for being with us, and I will
You're
be
welcome.
addressing you in a few minutes with a couple of questions that we've also have received already. Without further ado, Raed, always a pleasure to have you on our calls as well. I'm personally how do you say in Arabic شهادتي مجروحة, so I don't know how to exactly translate it, but all the way the platform is yours. Thank you for everything you do, and I'll leave you to it.
Thank you, Charles. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Ra'ad Hanoun, instructor at Morgan International since 2013. Two, I would like to really congratulate you for attending this webinar and considering your CMA as a professional education certificate. Because as my colleague said, this certificate would really give you a competitive advantage, as basically the content of the CMA is basically related directly to what is required by the workplace right now. So once you are certified management accountants, you will have a competitive advantage compared to your peers. So the effort, the commitment that you'll be putting today would really be paying off in the future. So congratulations. Two, basically, again, as my colleague said, the content of this curriculum is really important because it addresses the needs of the workplace. So for example, you as management accountants later on, you will be required to take decisions. In order to take this decision, I should have data on hand so that I can use this data in order to take the correct decision. This is why the IMA Institute included in its curriculum the financial statements to give the candidates a clear idea about the different types of financial statements, how to read and analyze those financial statements, so that later on we can take the best decision as management accountants. The first statement that is related to the financials is basically called the income statement. Look, whenever we're talking about income statement, I'm basically talking about the statement that shows the firm's revenues, expenses, and the corresponding gain or loss. So for me as an investor, before I take the investment decision, it's very important for me to tell whether the firm is profitable or not. In order to tell whether the firm is doing good or not, it's a must for me to look at the income statement. So if I have what it takes to analyze and read this income statement, this would allow me to take the best decision to whether I go for the investment or not. So this income statement, it shows the firm's profitability over a period of time. And for investors who might be interested in investing in this company, they would have a certain idea about the profitability of the firm, the value of the firm. For lenders, if a company is applying for a loan, for example, the bank, in order to approve the loan, will be asking for the financial statements, including the income statement. So as a lender, I should have an idea about the income statement, how to read it, how to analyze it, in order to tell whether this company is eligible to get the loan or not. So investors will be interested in the income statement. Lenders will be interested in the income statements. Again, the managers as well. So as managers, we want to tell whether the firm is doing good or bad. I want to tell whether the firm is following the budget, the plan, the strategy or not. So again, as a manager, if I want to take a proper decision, I should know how to read the income statement. So this is why the financial statements are very important for us as decision makers in order to take the best decisions, besides investors and lenders. Look, this is a pro forma income statement. We have what we call the single step income statement. This single step income statement, it shows the firm's revenues minus the firm's expenses. Whenever I'm talking about the revenue, this is basically the inflow of resources that the firm might generate because of the sale of product, rendering of services. Minus the expenses, this would be related to the cost incurred during the operation. So that the revenue minus the expense would give me the income. This income will be positive if the firm's revenue is greater than the firm's expense. However, I might have a loss if the expense is greater than the revenue. So looking at the single step income statement, it shows the total revenue, the total expense, and the difference between this and that. But again, in order to have a better idea about the source of revenue, we present this income statement using what we call the multi-step income statement. And basically, this is the form that you see whenever you look at the company's income statement. Whenever we look at the multi-step income statement, I will find out that the income statement segregates the income into three different levels: the gross profit, the operating income, and the net income. It's very important for us to know that as decision makers, we might be mainly interested in this operating income. Why? Because the operating income, it basically shows the income generated from the principal activities of the firm, generated from the core business of the firm. So if I'm talking about, for example, a real estate company, the income generated from the construction of the real estates, from the sale of the real estates, would be recorded as operating income. So that I will have a clear idea about the firm's operating performance generated from its principal activities. However, if I only look at the net income as appeared here in the single step, this net income might be somehow misleading for one reason. Because this net income basically, it might include operating income, which is related to your principal activities, and non-operating income, which is peripheral, not related directly to your principal activities. So basically, here I might compare between two companies. One company with a net income, for example, of $1 million, and another company with a net income of only, let's say, $50,000. And look what? I might be recommending the company with a $50,000 net income as a potential investment. However, this firm is generating a net income of 1 million for one single reason. Then basically this net income of 1 million might be mainly generated from non-operating, from discontinuing income that might not recur in the future. However, this net income of $50,000 might be mainly from the operating income, and the firm recorded a non-operating loss for a one-time event, for example. So if I'm only looking at the net income and telling that, look, I would like to take this investment opportunity, it might not be the correct decision. However, when you look at the multi-step income statement and looking at the segregated income between gross profit, operating, and net income, I can tell, look, what really matters is the operating income. Because this is the income that will be recurring in the future. This is the income generated from the principal business activity, from the core business activity. So again, if I don't have what to take to read this income statement properly, again, this $1 million might mislead me and I will be recommending or taking an inappropriate decision. So it's very important, again, to know how to read the income statement. The other financial statement that you as decision makers might be interested in is basically called the balance sheet. Look, whenever I'm talking about the balance sheet, and I'm talking about having an idea about the firm's financial position. So if I would like to have a clear idea about the firm's financial position, I will be looking at what we call the balance sheet or the statement of financial position. This balance sheet basically would list the firm's assets, liabilities, and equity. Whenever I'm talking about assets, I'm talking about any cost that the firm incur and is expected to generate a future benefit. So for example, if the firm acquires an equipment, this equipment would be part of the assets. Why? Because this equipment is expected to benefit the firm for the coming period, for the coming 2, 3, 4 years period. So whatever cost you incur today and is expected to benefit the firm in the future, this will be recorded as an asset. Look what, later on when you go for more details, you will know that assets might not be owned by the firm. And it's not only related to what the firm owns. Again, it's related to what the firm benefits from. So for example, if you lease a certain building for 2 years period, and you prepay the rental fees, this prepayment of the rental fees will be recorded as an asset. although you don't own the building. However, you will benefit from the usage of the building in the coming 2 years period. So again, this cost would benefit the firm in the future. It will be reported as an asset. On the other hand, we have what we call the liabilities. Look, whenever I'm talking about liabilities, and I'm talking about any obligation that should be performed by the firm. So if you have a commitment to pay your supplier X dollar, this obligation is a liability. If you have an obligation to render a service to your client, this obligation is a liability. If you have an obligation to deliver a product to your consumer, this is a liability. So whenever you're looking at the firm's liability, you will be looking about the firm's commitment toward the counterparties. And again, when you go forward and look in the details of the liabilities, you will see that this liability will not only include payments that should be done by the firm, it might include as well products that should be delivered by the firm. It might include accounts related to services that should be rendered by the firm. So, what really matters, do you have any obligation that you should perform toward your client, toward the counterparty? If yes, this would be a liability. And then we have what we call the equity. Look, whenever I'm talking about the basic accounting equation, we always tell that the assets is equal to the liability plus equity. This equity basically is the book value of the firm, is the difference between the firm's assets and the firm's liability. So this equity would represent the amount capital contributed by the shareholders. It might include the retained earnings that is not distributed as dividends to the shareholders. So this is called the equity or the book value of the firm, which is the difference between the assets and liabilities. Usually, those assets might be segregated into different types. Basically, you will see later on that the liabilities might be recorded as, or the assets, current assets versus long-term assets. As well, the liabilities will be recorded as current liability versus long-term liability. So basically, we segregate those balance sheet accounts into current and long-term asset and liability. Look, whenever I'm talking about current asset, and basically I'm talking about any asset that can be utilized, that can be liquidated within 1 year or less, or one operating cycle. So for example, if you have accounts receivable to be collected from your client in the coming few months, this will be recorded as a current asset. However, if you have a land that is expected to have an estimated life of 30 years, this will be recorded as a long-term assets. So whenever you're talking about assets, always remember that this should be classified in terms of liquidity, from the most liquid asset, cash, marketable securities, accounts receivable, inventory, until the least liquid, like for example, the land. On the other hand, we have what we call the liability section, again, that represents obligations that should be performed by the firm. I will also record it in terms of liquidity. Current liability followed by long-term liability. Tab, you might ask me, okay, Tab, what is the added value of segregating the assets into current and long term and segregating the liability into current and long term? Look, when you go for the financial statement analysis, you will be comparing the current assets to the current liabilities. And if you'd like to assess the liquidity of the firm, it's very important for me, again, as a decision maker, to tell, Tab, how much current assets does the firm have versus how much current liability? Do you have current assets enough to cover your current liability or not really? So this is why it's a must for me to segregate between current assets and current liability, long-term assets and long-term liability. As well, if you would like to look at the solvency of the firm, you will be looking, for example, at the long-term assets versus the long-term liability. So it's very important when you look at the balance sheet to have this balance sheet segregated into assets, liability, and equity. Within the assets, current, long-term. Within the liability, current and long-term. As a decision maker, whenever I'm looking at the balance sheet, I should know that, okay, it might have a certain limitation. The limitation of the balance sheet, it basically shows the book value of the assets and liability and equity. What do I mean by book value? Basically, the accountant might record a machine with a book value of $5,000. Does it mean that this machine have the same market value? And if I want to sell the machine, will I sell it at $5,000? Not really. So a major limitation in most of your assets are recorded at what we call book value, which is different than the market value. So that if you would like to have a better insight about the firm's valuation, you can look at the balance sheet from the book value perspective. And again, you should do, for example, a certain due diligence to tell what is the market value so that it is different than the market value. Another limitation, whenever I'm talking about the equity and the book value of the firm, if I would like to sell, for example, an equity stake in McDonald's, basically McDonald's might tell, look what, and I have book value of assets, or the net book value of my assets is $1 billion. However, and I want to sell it for $1.2 billion. So now I should understand that, yes, this would be normal because the $1.2 billion represents the market value. However, the $1 billion is the accounting value or the book value. This $200 million, from where it showed up? What would be the reason of this difference between the book and the market value? I can tell you that basically the balance sheet is heavily related or based on estimations. So the accountant would be making a certain estimation that, for example, the depreciation of this asset is for 10% per year. The estimated life of that asset is for 5 years period. That those estimations might not be 100% related or matching the market value. So that estimations might be problematic. Two, for example, they might tell me, look what, if I'm selling you McDonald's, you have the brand name, you have the logo, you have the goodwill, you have the customer base, you have the reputation. All these are not included in the book value of the firm. However, they have a market value. So for us as decision makers, I should be able to understand whenever you read the balance sheet that you have those limitations. And whenever you're taking a certain decision, to make sure that this decision is basically in line with your understanding of the book value, for example, and what we call the market value. Finally, we have what we call the cash flow statement. Look, whenever I'm talking about the cash flow statement, basically I'm talking about the statement that shows the cash on hand available and the source of this cash. Let me tell you, if you have, for example, a net income, let's say, of $1,000, this will not mean that you have $1,000 as cash on hand. This will not be the same as the cash flow on hand for one reason. Because this net income of $1,000 might not be related to revenue that is collected from your client. So you might have a revenue that will be collected from the client. Although it's recorded as a net income, however, I did not collect the cash yet. And I might record an expense in this net income. However, this expense might not be paid to your client or to your supplier yet. So again, you recorded an expense that decreased your net income. However, your cash was not affected. So always remember that this net income of $1,000 will not be the same as the cash on hand. It's different than the cash flow on hand. So that you might have a cash flow of more than 1,000, less than 1,000, the same as 1,000, but it will not be, again, for sure the same. Most probably, it will be different. Look, when I look at the cash flow statement, I will be able to tell them how much cash do we have on hand and what are the sources of this cash. So basically, you might have an operating cash flow, an investing cash flow, and a financing cash flow. The sum of those three cash flows is the ending cash flow for the period. For me as a decision maker, I would like to tell that you have cash on hand of billions of dollars. This is good. However, I would like to tell Tab what is the source of this cash? Is it generated from your operation? Which means this cash, is it generated from your principal activity? Is it because you sold products, you rendered services to your clients, and you collected those billions of dollars? If this is the case, this would be amazing. I really be interested in such a company. What if this billion of dollars is basically generated from your investment cash flow? And I find out that a big portion of this amount is generated from the investment cash flow. Look, if this amount is generated from your investment cash flow, this is because you're selling your assets, you're liquidating your business. So basically, then I see that the most of the $1 billion is generated from the investment. And this is because the firm is selling its equipment, its machines. This might be a red flag for me. And I can tell that, look, the firm is suffering from liquidity problems and was obliged to sell off its assets or part of its assets. So this same $1 billion that is in the hand of the firm might indicate a problem, not a good scenario. So I don't have this idea about the source of the cash flow. I will tell, look, the firm has a very high level of cash, so the firm is highly liquid, doing great, and this would be a good potential. However, when I looked at the cash flow and found out that this cash is basically generated from the investment because the firm sold part of its equipment, this would raise a red flag. So for example, this ICF investment cash flow, I always prefer it to be negative. Because if I have a negative investment cash flow, this means that the firm is investing, is acquiring assets, is initiating new businesses, which means that the firm is doing good. It is going toward a growth phase. And finally, I have what we call the financing cash flow. The cash flow that might be generated by issuing capital, issuing debt, borrowing money from the bank. So again, if I find out that most of this $1 billion on hand is generated from loans, for example, because the firm applied for a loan and gets the approval so that it has on hand $1 billion worth of cash, this will also raise a red flag. The firm has high leverage. Will the firm be able to invest this borrowed amount properly, to generate a profit enough to cover the interest, to return back the principal, and make a profit? Red flag. So whenever you're looking at the cash flow, again, this segregation of the cash into those three sources would give me as a decision maker a clear idea about the source of the cash, and again, whether this cash on hand is a good indicator if it's generated from the operation, or la, it might be a negative indicator if most of it related to, for example, the proceeds from the sale of assets. So basically, this is an introduction of what we call the financial statements: income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow statement. And this is what the IMA, again, make sure to give you as candidates, to give you the clear idea about, again, those contents, those concepts that are highly required, highly demanded in the workplace. So this is a demo lecture, Charles. I hope you enjoyed
Thank you.
it.
Thank you so much. I personally always enjoy your lectures. That was amazing, Raed. Thank you. And I'm very happy that you included the three statements actually mentioned of most of the three statements in this section, because I want to focus a little bit more on specifically the cash flows, because like I say, a lot of employees let's say in companies, whether they are manager, supervisory, or even junior level or entry level employees. Sometimes two of the constantly occurring, if you want, requests within any company, either raises or maybe discounts to boost sales or whatever it is in any
Uh-huh.
company. You always have those requests. And a lot of times a manager, let's say a sales manager or a country manager, would like, if they don't have enough experience, if they've been recently appointed or whatnot, they would present some kind of proposal that the CFO would refuse or shoot down. And a lot of times they don't understand, like, what's the problem? My figures are correct, my forecasts are proper, but sometimes that proposal doesn't align with the projected cash flow that the CFO is looking into. So as a manager, if you're a better management accountant, you would also know how to better align any proposal, whether it's a discount, a promotion, a raise, or whatever it is, to align it more with the company's cash flows, so that you can secure an approval for it, of course. That's one
Definitely.
of the examples, maybe. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I want to just move into a bit of Q&As very quickly. We don't have many that are left unanswered, but I would certainly love to hear a little bit more from yourself, Mr. Raed and Mr. Michael, specifically on a couple of questions. So if I may, Mr. Michael in particular, we have a question relating to a candidate who actually completed their preparation course for part one and are preparing for their exam, going through the material, but they feel overburdened by the density of content. Any tips there that can help them maybe loosen up the burden?
Yeah, well, I would say first off, you're in good company because I think virtually everyone who prepares for any exam like the CMA exam there's always the thought that, well, I could spend more time, I could spend another hour preparing. Sure. But there's also the point of diminishing returns, right? There's a point where you're not gaining much benefit from incrementally another hour or another day or another week of studying. Second point is, remember, the objective is not to get an A or to get a perfect score. That would be nice. I'm not saying
It's the
don't and
past.
can't, but it's about passing the exam. A lot of times I've had instructors say you don't need to know everything about everything, but you need to know most about most of it. So if there are some minor gaps, you do what you can to shore those gaps up for the exam. But as long as you have a pretty broad command of the material, you're going to be put in good shape. And finally, that's our job, right? It's Becker's job and Morgan's job to present the material in such a way that gives you the best chance to be successful. So if you followed the prescription that we've laid out in terms of how to approach the material, then know that you are and draw confidence from the fact that you have been well prepared and you will be ready to tackle the exam on testing day.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Michael, for that. Raed, do you have any insights on that from a tutoring perspective, given that this is probably one of your students as well?
Yes, Charles, look what, and basically what I always recommend, I would like to, again, have a certain commitment. I would like to find time in order to study. And I always recommend to practice questions. So basically, if I have some weaknesses in a certain area, if you practice the question, especially when using the Q bank related to Becker, it includes plenty of questions that really match the exam questions. So basically, once I'm practicing those questions 1, 2, 3 times, I will be able to really understand the concepts. And what is most important, if I answer, for example, a question incorrectly, Becker will give me the correct solution and will let me know why this answer is correct and why the other answers are not correct. So basically, Anna, my always recommendation for the candidates is to make sure that they practice questions. And if they want to prioritize, I always tell, give most of the attention to practicing questions, because this is what really makes the difference. And again, based on my experience, 10 years now giving CMA courses, most of the candidates that were really able to pass the exam from the first attempt are those candidates who practiced Becker Q Bank 2 or 3 times. And I can confirm that we'll have very high probability of passing the exam from the first time. So prioritize for practicing questions. This would be a very important factor.
Thank you so much, Raed, for that. And I'll add to that to both of you, Michael, with the insights on the software, and Raed with these tips, that one of the main, very important features with Becker, be it on the CMA or the CPA, is the adaptive learning and the adapt to you technology. So as you mentioned, Raed, that the system will tell you if your answer is wrong, why it's wrong. But more important than that, the intelligence, or the let's call it an artificial intelligence other than Newt, within the system would actually customize itself towards the weaknesses of the candidate and constantly bombard them with questions from the parts they are weaker in, to motivate them to study those parts over and over and over again to make sure they become better. And the other very important feature is the exam day readiness. I mean, you mentioned practicing MCQs, scoring high on your MCQs. Well, there's an exam day ready feature on the Becker Access that actually ticks a green mark when they believe you are exam day ready on either of the contents and the modules. And that's by actually scoring high on the MCQs and maybe the essays of that particular content. And once the entire software deems you exam day ready for that part, it means, because it's been statistically proven by a third-party analyzer, not Morgan, not Becker themselves, that you have a 94% chance of passing in the first attempt if you actually achieve those criteria for exam day readiness on the Becker software. So really, all the resources are there to help you. For the person who asked, for the people actually who asked that question, practice your MCQs. And from personal experience, I have a candidate who actually passed their CMA in under 8 months for both parts. And the way they did it is by constantly repeating their MCQs until they actually scored somewhere between 98 and 100% on their MCQs on the platform, and they nailed the MCQs on the exam. That was 75% of their exam score. So practice, practice, practice. That's all you need. Michael, if I may scratch your brain with another question, because
Sure.
as we mentioned, as we noticed in the polls previously, a big part of the attendees with us are non-finance and non-accounting majors. What would you say that they could benefit most from actually learning the CMA itself?
Well, I think that the CMA, or even just the preparation for the exam, I've always thought of accounting and financial reporting and financial management is kind of a unique language. And so I look at this as it's teaching you the language. So if that's not an area that you currently have and you would list and say, well, I'm not fluent in that language, this is a good way to get there, which will pay you benefits in and of itself. Just being able to interpret financial statements. You just got a little glimpse of that from Rad's lecture today in terms of how to read financial statements. This is going to get you to you're going to jump from a fairly, let's say, go to fluency with the language to expertise, right? That's what CMA is ultimately going to require, is it's going to build you up to a level of expertise. But just the process, I think, will give you a lot of insights, valuable insights that you'll find is applicable in your day-to-day work. And then the CMA, just think of that as kind of the pinnacle of that process. But every step along the way, that learning along the way, I think you're going to see benefits in a lot of different areas of your work, even if you don't consider yourself kind of a dyed-in-the-wool finance or accountant, or finance major, what have you. There's still a lot there for you to get through, and we do have candidates that don't call that their principal background, but still are able to prepare and succeed in taking the CMA exam.
I, for example, I'm originally a physiotherapist, so
Okay,
that
gotcha.
says a
There you go.
lot. Okay, thank you so much for that, Michael. One last question, and I'll ask you, Ra'ad, to try and give me that insight. Given the types of reports that we noticed on the poll that our attendees have to work with, some of them are actually over 90% of them work with forecasts and budgets. At least 50 to 70% with them work with maybe procurement reports, inventory reports, and other types of reports. how would you say learning the CMA, like we just saw with you segregating the multi-step financial statements or other, or when they go into the other topics like budgeting and forecasting, decision analysis, etc., how fast can you not recommend, but can you confirm that the learnings they will have during the CMA, they can apply on their day-to-day activities in their jobs?
Yes, look, this is what really distinguishes the CMA from, for example, a university program. In a university, they will be taking some theories, for example. However, in the CMA, we have more to practice. And for example, when you talked about budgeting, for example, the budgeting topic within the CMA is totally practical. And basically, they will be able to learn through case studies, through scenarios, through examples that are really workplace scenarios, workplace case studies. So those stuff, budgeting, variance analysis, costing, decision analysis, and so on, they are highly applicable, highly practical in the workplace. So unlike the university lectures or courses, the CMA content is created in a way to be applied on the spot. So basically, once you have this information in terms of budgeting, for example, from the CMA, you can take it, apply it in the workplace because it's totally extracted from the requirements of the workplace. So it's highly applicable.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Raed. And I just want to say that one more thing I didn't mention, that I've also launched a poll. Just if everyone's left with us here today could just give us a quick feedback of how valuable they felt any of the content, if it made them feel more confident to undertaking the CMA exam, because as we noticed on the first poll that over 60% of the attendees have either recently enrolled in the CMA or already took on one of the parts and aiming to take the second. And the remaining 40% are considering undergoing the CMA. Zero, almost zero, I would say. We had one person who was not really sure if the CMA was the certification for them. I hope with some of the content that we covered today, it did clarify how the CMA is a very suitable certification for anyone aspiring to upskill and grow and boost their career to a different level with the learnings they can have, the application that they can implement immediately and on daily basis, even before they actually pass the exam. I mean, I, for one, was able to implement some of the managerial accounting learnings as I was going through it immediately on my job in my upcoming reports. I mean, it's a personal experience at least. The poll I put up has already had a lot of responses, so thank you, everyone. We're very glad that you find value in what we offered. Michael, I want to thank you again for dedicating the time, and despite the time difference at this hour also, it was very, very highly appreciated. Raed, again, always a pleasure to have you here. I'll give either one of you a few seconds if you want to add something for the candidates, because it's seemingly we've answered all the available questions so far. I've answered a lot throughout in writing, and those were the questions left.
Again, I want to confirm that the commitment, the effort that we'll be putting when studying the CMA, it will really be paying off later on. Again, this will be like a passport or a visa to joining multinational companies in different countries. It will really put them ahead of their peers. It will give them competitive advantage, competencies that is basically required in the workplace. So again, I really want them to continue and move forward and register for the CMA, study the CMA, and passing the CMA, both parts.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Raed.
I'll echo that. It's for those of you who still feel like I need to get more information, that's a good thing. Frankly, that will also serve you well as you prepare for the exam because that it's that desire to learn, the desire to add to your skill set, and that really is how you want to look at this. This is an investment in your future. It's an investment, and it's part of lifelong learning in terms of building your skill set and making you more valuable wherever that your career journey may ultimately take you. So you've definitely gotten on the right road, and I wish you the very best of luck as you now pursue your CMA and hopefully additional credentials and upskilling in the future.
Thank you so much. Just a final word to close for everyone. We will be sharing the recording of this session with everyone to be able to review it. Just allow us a couple of days to make sure we got everything cleaned up, and we will certainly share it with you. Thank you again for everyone attending. Thank you everyone for the support. Michael, Raed, Ahmed, who just left us as well. And I'll be closing it in for the night. Should you have any questions later on, please do respond to the email that you will receive the link to the recording on. And definitely, based on your responses on the polls, whoever requested to be contacted shortly, someone from our team will be contacting you very shortly. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening or good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.